Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I have a few slides, so I don't know if I just have to push the button to bring them up, or...
There you go.
Okay. All right, excellent. So, I wanted to take just one step back first, but ultimately I will respond to both your questions.
That's good news.
Where do we need to go and how do we get there? And I'm going to try to do that in very little time, of course. So first of all, why are we even talking about the circular economy? The last decades have witnessed, an incredible increase in materials use. And, we've essentially doubled our material consumption since the 80s. And our projections at the OECD show that global material consumption is going to triple to 2060. And of course, that in itself is not necessarily a problem, but it becomes a problem because there are associated environmental impacts. And here on this slide, what you can see is the projected increase in greenhouse gas emissions linked to materials management, which is essentially going to more than double. By 2060, we're going to have 9% of total greenhouse gas emissions that will be associated with 7 key metals, 12% of greenhouse gas emissions associated with concrete alone. So the total numbers, of course, then you have to put them in context. I won't say much more on this. So what's the solution? A lot of people think the solution is a transition towards circularity. Circularity really means a number of different things. At least this is the way we understand it at the OECD. It's not just about looping materials, which is what you see here at the bottom, but it's also about using fewer materials for the same output, doing more with less, increasing material efficiency. It's about slowing the throughput of materials through the economy, through things such as reuse, remanufacturing, refurbishment. And the good news here is that a lot of the building blocks to get us there do already exist. There are technologies, there's lots of innovation. There are technologies that we have. There's plenty of organizational innovation in the form of new business models as well. The problem is that all of this for the moment stays at a very small scale. Most circular economy business models, be they sharing models where people share bicycles or power tools, product service systems where companies switch from selling goods to selling services instead. They usually occupy very small market niches, typically around 5 to 10% of the market. So the challenge here is to upscale these efforts. And in doing so, there are at least 2 important things that sort of stand in the way, 2 obstacles or challenges that need to be overcome. One is information. Information, because in order to achieve the closing of the materials loops, the slowing of the materials loops, and the resource efficiency, requires tremendous coordination and cooperation along value chains, but also across jurisdictions, because value chains, of course, span the globe. And to achieve that, you need to be able to trace materials, to understand where they come from, how they have been produced, etc. And so there's an information problem, which is the first market failure, I'd say. And the second is that there is a lack of incentive. Simply most of those business models, they don't scale up because they're not economically viable in the present conditions. So there is an issue here for policy to step in, put prices right, invest in infrastructure, much of which is often municipal infrastructure, by the way, when we talk about waste management, to create the conditions. My final point, I think, is with the green recovery. We have an opportunity to move a big step forward from our OECD Green Recovery database, where we have been tracking what's been going on that front. We can see that actually very little of those green recovery resources go into circular economy transition for the moment. Is somewhere below 3%, where 40–50% are allocated in some way to climate change measures. So it seems that there's a little bit of a lost opportunity here. The positive thing that we see is there's a lot of policy action. So reforms in our policy frameworks that are now taking place, certainly in the EU. Many of those really focus on the downstream part, so more at the end of life management. And there's clearly more effort needed upstream to encourage better designs and sort of waste prevention actions much earlier in the value chain. So and we can talk maybe a little bit more about that in a moment, but I'd like to stop there.